Have you taken the Myers Briggs to be identified as an INFJ? My name is Heather Feather. I am the owner of Rare Bird Medicine. Today's topic is the INFJ Rare Bird. Heather Feather is an INFJ from the Myers Briggs. And so the Myers Briggs is a personality test that many psychologists use or relationship counselors use. It's been used in a variety of different ways to recognize 16 distinct personality matrices of being. In these matrices of being, the INFJ constitutes 1 to 2% of the entire population of planet Earth, which makes them a rare bird indeed. And I wanted to talk about some of the distinctions of what it means to be an INFJ. An INFJ is considered to be introverted, intuitive, feeling, judgment. And so their introverted and intuitive nature means that they have an extremely high emotional quotient or emotional intelligence. Daniel Goleman wrote a phenomenal book on that that's very interesting. But they tend to have very developed empathy. They tend to be overly willing to martyr the self to serve others and serve humanity. They tend to be extremely forgiving because they also have a very developed pattern recognition. And so that person at work that nobody likes, the INFJ starts to look at the root as to why is that person behaving that way. They start to look at pattern recognition as to why something strange is showing up with this individual rather than just judging them and they're such a jerk. You know what I mean? They're known as the advocate, the INFJs, and they will advocate often for those that are being spoken ill about. They'll go, oh, well, here's some things that I'm seeing as I look at that person. And so they might offer insights. They tend to be very creative. They often make excellent writers and feel like they need time to write so that they can be comprehensively understood because there is so much going on in the way they receive their world due to their intuitive feeling heart-centered capacities through their intuitive gifts, but also their kind of logic developed pattern recognition capacities. And so they tend to want time to kind of piece all of that together to make sure they're able to deliver what it is they truly want to say. Heather Feather's always felt that way. I feel like conversation, even Heather can converse very, very quickly. And sometimes that fast pace of conversation doesn't afford either entity the opportunity to really check in to ensure that what's being delivered is the wholeness of what I'm wanting to say. We can also be interrupted when we're trying to speak, and it can be difficult to get the full meat onto the bones of the message we're trying to deliver in these streets. Heather Feather is extremely forgiving, and I've been told by friends, it's like you tend to go to the spirit realm and see people spiritually, but the 3D reality of what they're handing you is often not a match to how you're seeing their being. And I think many INFJs would relate to this matrix because of their empathy, because of their emotional intelligence, they're aware that anything that is unwanted or like an unpleasant thing to experience is present because it has a root. We don't have a plant in our garden that didn't have a root that caused that weed to grow in our garden. So they tend to be looking very deeply at things. They don't like typically surface conversations or shallow conversation and can find that to literally be an energetic battery drain. They want to understand existential questions. They want to understand very deep related topics. And in this regard, they can often play the role of counselor, the role of martyr. They often are a place, being 1 to 2% of the population that sees things in unique and distinct ways that many beings can go to when they seek counsel. Heather Feather, as a medicine person, as a Celtic shaman, as an INFJ, as an autistic person, has a distinct perspective she has to offer in this reality. And you can trust far more people than you may have imagined for Heather Feather enter Heather's life seeking that unique perspective to understand what's been going on with them that's causing strife. Because Heather Feather can get to the root. She has this pattern recognition, and when a two-legged is ready to look at the pattern to have it be different, I can then offer many things I may have seen and contained because of my compassion. Most INFJs will not offer you their insights and awareness if they feel like you're not in a space to receive the offering. Because of their compassion, they're not over here just going, well, I see that that's going to fail because, you know what I mean? But it can be overwhelming because your friends, your family, people in your life, you can see all of these different things that many people do not see. When you're in conversation, you're not only paying attention to the words that are coming out of someone's mouth as you attentively, generously listen, which many beings do not do. You're paying attention to the tone, to the cadence, to the body language, to the pauses, to what is and is not said, to, you know what I mean? The context of the languaging. You are actually deep diving into all of the things present when you're engaging with them. Most INFJs don't like being in large groups, and it's because of this pattern recognition capacity. They can often get overwhelmed. But one of the challenging things of their beings that they need to learn, and Heather Feathers had to learn this, I was told at a very young age by somebody that came into my life, they were like, you're a martyr. And I didn't even know what the word was. I was like, what's a martyr? They're like, it's somebody that's willing to suffer so that others may have. And I was like, 100%. Oh my God, I feel seen. I will gladly suffer so that we may all have. I am strong and I can endure, you know what I mean? So like, why would I not endure something that I can endure if it's going to aid us all to be at a little bit higher frequency? But this standard itself of expecting evolution of the self, advocating for evolution for all of us, can become its own burdensome weight, because you tend, as an INFJ, to be very self-evaluating. You tend to look at the self. And you tend to want to unpack your shadow. You tend to want to unpack what isn't working. You tend to want to be your highest version of self at all times. So you can spend an entire life being so self-evaluating, but then find maybe that some of the people in the river of your life are not as self-evaluating. They're not looking at their shadow. They're not looking at what they hand you. They're not paying attention to if they are being a taker versus a giver. And they're not paying attention as to whether or not they're being compassionate with the way you might feel about what they say. Because if they're not an INFJ, they might not have the same matrix that you're offering. And INFJs can often find it exhausting because they feel often very isolated. Because they're 1% to 2% of the population, the things that they bring to bear in relations are often not what they experience as being offered to them in relationship, because mathematically it's just a much lower percent. Now, Heather Feather has her share of INFJ friends, and when I talk to them, they're very able to help me to see aspects of self that are not helping me. Even my therapist the other day was pointing to something in me that I had never seen, which is that as an INFJ, I don't want to hand you my anger. I don't want to hand you my poison. You've got your own poisons you've had to find the antidote to, and I'm not trying to contribute as an advocate to more of that in you. So I tend to isolate and handle my own poisons myself, find the antidote, be the medicine person to the self. I can't be a medicine to you unless I'm a medicine to me. But the challenge is that many INFJs, when they retreat and pull back, and people feel comfortable receiving them for their unique offerings, people can feel as if they've been rejected by the INFJ. And INFJ's need to retreat has absolutely nothing to do with you whatsoever. An INFJ needs time and space to be alone. Even though I do, as an INFJ, like smaller groups, and ultimately will seek and create and manifest in this life a divine partner that's equally yoked to me, that does develop the self physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually. And I now trust them to find me and trust that we will come together. And just as I trust spirit and divinity, I've decided to give absolute trust that they'll come to me. I'm not seeking or looking for that person. They're going to come find me. And when they do, I'm going to understand that this being the same as me will have their own interests and ways in which they need alone time too. Because Heather Feather is not somebody that can spend every single second with you. I have lots of things to deliver, and that's part of being an INFJ and the advocate. You came to make change here and to use your life in that way. The negative aspect of that is you tend to overgive, and it's your job to be in balance with giving and receiving. And so Heather Feather has chosen this year to isolate so that I can do the work I need to do to remove the tumor that I created in my chest by being out of balance, physically, mentally, emotionally, or spiritually, and do my own homework, and to not be interrupted while I use my attention to also create and advocate through classes and services by receiving all of the pattern recognition and all of the emotional intelligence of other beings while it's my time to heal. But people can take that personally and not even recognize that you as an INFJ may not be receiving equanimity in the nature of your relations with others, and the way you heal is by being alone. Go to rarebirdmedicine.com and click on the classes link if you're an INFJ and would like to receive a class by one. Amun.